Good morning. So this past week we did have the shooting in Charleston, and it gets to us, all these shootings and killings, and it seems a little bit more for just the fact that it happened in a Bible group on a Wednesday night. And for those of you who may not have heard, that he actually sat in the room for an hour before he did the shooting and said that they were so kind he had actually thought about not shooting them. He was feeling something. So it's hard to understand. Even in God, these violence acts can happen. Even as we're praying and knowing love and unconditional love, this violence can happen. And if we can't find protection in God, where do we find it? And it also happens to be Father. Oh, first I also want to say there's many of churches, spiritual organizations are uniting, just saying, consciously uniting ourselves with the AME Church this morning. There's only one power, and we're with them today. There's no separation. And so it seemed interesting that we also have Father's Day, and what I've noticed having 3 older brothers was that often I hear so much anger towards the masculine energy, towards men, because what I've heard often in our sort of spiritual but not religious world, if people were just more like women, if they were just as kind and compassionate as women, we wouldn't have all this violence. That in fact, this violence comes from that very male and aggressive energy. So I think we need to heal that as well. If we're going to heal as a planet and we're going to heal what's happening, we have to heal how we understand the masculine energy in our world and in our lives. Years ago, in 1992, I read Houston Smith's book, The World's Religions. Has anyone else read that here? Yeah, it's fantastic, isn't it? And I remember for me, one of the reasons why it was fantastic is, like many of you, I had heard what all the violence and cruelty that had been done in the name of religion. In the name of God, I'm going to go kill my brothers and sisters, and so much violence. But he wrote his book not according to the limitations of religion. He sets out in the introduction, my intention is to explain the ideals of each religion. And that was a wonderful way to start realizing it's our human imperfections, the way we distort things that turns things around, but at the heart, at the essence of all the world's religions is this incredible beauty and power and strength, and that's what we want to tap into. And that's what we have to remember about the masculine energy, that the ideal of the masculine energy is incredibly beautiful. It's not just a little bit beautiful, it's infinitely beautiful. It is infinitely good. And we need to embrace that ideal in ourselves if we are going to heal. We don't heal by just saying feminine energy is better and let's push away the masculine because it's evil. That's not healing. That's creating more violence in a more subtle, passive-aggressive way, which women are also known for. So we don't want to be violent in our hearts because there's no need for it. That the ideal of the masculine energy is an actual incredibly beautiful and powerful gifts. So what's some of the gifts that masculine energy gives us? Masculine energy is very directional. It's volitional. It says, I want to make something better than what it was before, and it uses that direction to move forward. We've heard in Stephen Covey's book, 7 Habits for Highly Effective People, seek first to understand and then to be understood. One way we can look at it, not limited to this way, is the feminine energy is seek first to understand that the feminine energy works to build compassion, to build resonance. I hear what you're saying. I hear you. I feel you. And then to be understood. And we can take this further. We can make a difference. We can change. We're not going to be ready to change often until we feel heard. But when we feel heard, then it's to say, we don't want to accept this as our status quo anymore. We want to move past the boundaries of what we've done before, where we've been before, into something new, into a new possibility. And that masculine energy is very directional. It has a mission. It has volition. It says, I see something and I'm going to go towards it. I remember I was someone who was sort of conflicted when I was growing up because I liked to learn. I was curious. I absolutely hated school. Don't tell my kids that. But I really disliked it. So I was as an adult, and I knew I wanted to have children. I was in this constant and just out of my own healing, what would be another way of doing education? So I was looking at all these alternative educational processes, and there's one school that's now created some others around the country, but the original one is in Sudbury, Massachusetts. So it's called the Sudbury Valley School, started in the 60s, and it's completely, so from age 3 to 18, you come to a building with a lot of land, and you can do whatever you want. That's just everything. The idea is that people innately want to learn. People are innately curious, and if you just let people be, they will learn on their own. If you let children be, they will get curious, and then they'll come up to a teacher and say, hey, I really want to learn how to read now. Can you teach me how to read? Or I really want to understand this next math thing. Because and what they find is that these youth have grown up and they tend to mirror exactly what society is. Some are really academically oriented, some want to be professionals, some want to be landscapers, but they're following their own interior volition. So I thought, this is it. I found my answer. So I love this idea that we just innately want to learn and we don't need to be forced. When we're ready, we'll start asking questions. So I was telling, he comes up a lot, my brother George, who was here last week. I was telling him my great new enthusiastic, he was someone who liked school. See, George and I, the reason why we're so good together is we are diametrically opposite in almost every way. So he loved school, he loved academics, he loved studying. So, and I was telling him about it, and he said, I can appreciate that, being as he's learned to be with me. I can appreciate your perspective, and that would serve you. He said, but at the same time, he said, I would never give up what Dad gave me, which is he always pushed me. I would write a paper, and I would take it into him, and he'd always say, no, this could be much better, and he'd start asking me questions, and he would push me beyond what I thought was possible. And he said, if I didn't have that external push of pushing past what I thought was possible, I would have just turned it in and been fine with it. But I was grateful he was pushing me past what I thought I could do, and I would never give that up. So again, we're back to this masculine and feminine energy, which is, yes, we want to come from within, but there is such a great power in that directional that we can be better, whether it's fathering in our personal lives, in our relationships, in its collective, in our work life, or in our community and as citizens of the world. That masculine energy is going to be pushing us and saying we can do better. We can be better than what we've been before. And it may be uncomfortable, and you may not think that you can do it, but I can see it. I can see you can go there. That's an extraordinary gift that we don't want to live without. We need that power that's pushing us, is not just having compassion for where we are, but then pushing us to even past that, pushing past the borders. So we give thanks for that masculine energy, that directional, volitional push that pushes us past to where we've been before. One of the other, and it's not limited to these three, these are just the three that came forth for me. Another gift that the masculine energy gives us is strength and courage. Because when we start pushing past the borders of what has been done before, often we get a lot of pushback. So in our own interior journey, when we're wanting to push and get further in some sort of psychological way, or thinking in a different way, or going to higher states of consciousness. So in the old-time religion, when they would say, if you were trying to get to higher states of consciousness, the devil would attack you. We would say, Yogananda says your lower nature tries to stop you. We would say it's your subconscious mind that's going to start sabotaging you. So we have all sorts of different words that we use, but the point is the moment everyone recognizes, no matter where you're from, is that when we start pushing past the borders of the status quo, whether it's in your own internal life or in our culture, you get pushback. You get pushback saying, this isn't okay. You have to have courage and strength to keep saying, yes, I'm going to move forward. I'm going to move forward. I think of someone like Martin Luther King, who had so many, there's so many examples, but he's the first that came to mind in terms of so many death threats, not only against him, but against his family and against his children. And yet he believed so strongly in what was to come, or what his vision of pushing forward, that he didn't give up. He didn't lose courage because of those death threats. And fortunately, they were never taken out against his children. Unfortunately, they were taken out against him. But I thought of myself, and I thought, even if I just got even one letter that someone responded to something I said here on a Sunday morning and said they were going to hurt our children because of something I said, I think there would be a part of me that would just say, I'm done. You know, I'm don't mess with my children, so I'm done. But if everyone just did that, every time we got some anger or violence pushed at us, we gave up, we would never move forward. We have to sometimes have that courage. I love those lines that courage doesn't mean not having fear, it means moving forward in spite of the fear. To have that strength and that courage to move forward towards something that you can see, you know is going to be a better world, and the willingness to push through all that stuff that's saying, no, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it, and it comes at us in so many different ways. That's what the masculine energy does. And by the way, this is all reflected in athletics, which is why I think the athletic world is so, it draws so many people, because there's that feeling of they're pushing past boundaries, they're pushing past what's possible. Like LeBron James. I'm kidding. Push a one-man team. I'm kidding, sorry. Congratulations, Warriors. I'm very happy for you. And looking at sports and how much they attract incredibly passionate energy, because it takes that passion and that strength and that pushing forward. We can't help but also look at the spiritual but not religious communities that tend to be highly feminine. So even as I'm talking about that, is it because we spend a lot of time talking about communal and sharing and feelings, but we're not directional enough? Are we not courageous enough to push past boundaries where our main goal is to feel heard and not to take that next step and saying, how can I push past that? I'm not saying, it's just something to inquire about. You know, if we always say the external reflects the internal, and if our communities, it is here, but it's in since I've been on this journey, 1990, 25 years, every community I have been in has been 80% feminine, have been women. Just an interesting question. Why is that? As we honor the masculine. And I think of, it was Martin Luther King, I think of Malcolm X. And why I like Malcolm X is because if you watch that movie, if you haven't, with Denzel Washington, it's so powerful. And so many of the things he said back then we're seeing said again today. That people it seems so radical when he was saying it. But now people are saying, you know what, he was actually saying a lot, which we just couldn't even hear back then. But what I also liked, he was angry, but he had the ideal of good. And there was some violence in there at the beginning, but through that ideal of good, it transmuted him. And it transmuted his message. It transmuted his entire beingness. So we think of that masculine energy that may be not always on point. It may not always be that highest. I mean, Martin Luther King and Gandhi, there's such high ideals. And even if we don't always agree, if we feel that there's an ideal being pushed for, I look at Jaray, how do you say his last name? McKinson? He's sort of the speaker for this Black Lives Matter, and there's a lot of people following him, and there's other people saying, oh, he's no Martin Luther King, and yet his ideals are similar. He's learning the way. He's learning how to speak and push forward to something he feels this possibility of higher goodness. Yes, he may not be at the level of Martin Luther King yet, but he will move in that direction because he has that ideal and he's pushing towards it. His highest ideal is of infinite goodness, of infinite love for everybody, of infinite equality for everybody. That's his ideal, and I know that in his work and in his drive that will continue to grow within him as well as what he's doing publicly. And lastly, in terms of having strength and courage and vision, we have the pastor of the AME Church in South Carolina, Reverend Clementa Pinckney, who was murdered this past week. You know, his church, if I posted on my Facebook a 12-minute and 40-second talk that he was giving on the history of the church, which was about, which is from the 1800s, has been a place of creating equality. It's an incredible history of the church. And he himself was very committed and dedicated, but in a very loving and peaceful way. I like to think of him sort of the centerpiece here, because he was a way shower. That even as he was murdered, And we hear the responses of those who were related to the victims. Their response has been of extraordinary love and forgiveness. It has not been of anger and violence and let's get back at them and this is responding in hatred. His message that he was driving towards, it's still happening. And that doesn't mean that the loved ones, the family and the friends don't get angry along the way. It doesn't mean that they're not going to get depressed along the way. But what I do absolutely believe from what I've heard so far is that love will always be greater than all of that for all of them because of his teaching, because of what he was standing for in the road to becoming an equal country where there isn't discrimination. The road was a road of love. And that was the vision that he had, and he talked about it, and he spoke, and we can see it and experience it in his community at the darkest time. At the lowest time, they are practicing these principles of pure, unconditional love. And it's extraordinary, extraordinary to experience. And that's the third, which is to have this direction and volition, to have the courage and independence. There's a very strong masculine ideal that you don't have to wait till everyone else to get there. That everyone can get to this place independently on your own. Masculine energy tends to be very independent, where the feminine energy likes to gain collective agreement. Let's all agree that we all believe, and that can go sometimes a little slower, and sometimes it doesn't move forward as much. The masculine energy will say, I hear you and I see you and I'm willing to move forward even if other people aren't ready to move forward. I'm willing to go to this next place. I'm willing to cross this border even before everybody else goes there. So we can do it in our own personal lives with our family. We can do it in our community, in our work life, and we can do it as global citizens. That we don't wait for the world to catch up. We cross those boundaries. We continue to grow and stand for what we believe in. We can be individual way showers, every one of us, that impacts everybody, and it can be in small ways. I think of, Jack and I have been doing this Engine 28, whatever that was, whatever, health plan that we're doing, and it comes from my brother Rob, and of my three brothers, he's sort of the least like Shazammy, and yet, but he is over the past year, he's just been posting how he's been changing his eating, and I've been watching his life just transform, and he isn't doing it as any big collective. He's not trying to lead any movement. He's just giving witness to his own process of transformation, and now he's doing yoga. He's an atheist, or he was. Now he just applied to be a yoga teacher trainer and is reading the Bhagavad Gita. I'm like, holy smokes. But I'm watching this whole transformation happen before me, and it inspired me and inspired Jack. And he's not trying to do it for that, and yet just by standing in his leadership in his own life, moving past his own limitations, it doesn't always have to be these big cultural habit patterns, just moving past his own habit patterns that were not serving him and pushing past them. And even wasn't it working, he kept at it. There were times where it wasn't working, nothing was showing up, yet he kept at it and he kept at it. And slowly, we've watched his life transform and been inspired by it. That's what that masculine energy does. It doesn't wait for everybody else to go into agreement. He was a vegan. I mean, still my other brothers are like, what the heck is he doing? Why is he becoming a vegan? It just seems so odd in the world, especially more in the East Coast world. But in so much of the world, why even go that route? He didn't wait till he got everybody's agreement that this was a good thing to do. He just did it. And we can be that autonomous. We can be that independent. I am going to do this because I know it's right for me. And I'm going to stand in that. I'm going to keep working at it. And I guarantee you that if you do that, you're going to inspire other people. You're going to start leading other people past their limiting habit patterns. That's the beauty of this masculine energy. And that's what we celebrate in our fathers. That there is that energy in our fathers. They may not have always done it with skillful means. They may have done it with a lot of unskillful means. But there is something within them that said, I want my children, the reason why, even if it's abusive, I push them because I want them to be better, because I want them to be stronger, because I want them to be smarter, because I want something greater for them than I see that they're doing right now. And so that anger may come out in a negative way. Some people had great fathers. Some people had fathers that really saw you and pushed you in a really healthy way. So we have the whole spectrum, but the ideal of the father is inherent and is in the seed of all men. They can't help it. They want something greater. And so those men in our lives, when they push us, and sometimes it's done well, and sometimes it's done in a really hurtful way, but underlying that is this desire for us to become better and greater and more of ourselves than we ever possibly could imagine. In the back there, we have people are bringing in pictures of loved ones who have made their transition. And we recognize, as we've been in this theme of extravagant abundance, that their spirits and their souls are here in this room, right here and right now. That many of us have fathers who have crossed over on the other side of the veil, or male mentor role models who we may know personally or not know personally. Martin Luther King can be a male role model without a personal connection. They're on the other side of the veil. They are encouraging us right now in this room become more than we ever thought we possibly could be. Go past our limiting habit patterns and show up in your life personally, for your family, for your community, and for this world in a way that you never thought you imagined you could do, and yet it's possible. It's possible. They encourage us to push forward, to become greater, to become more through direction, through courage and strength, and through that autonomy and independence of spirit. So this week, I invite you to remember your fathers and see if there can be some sort of healing, if there's been hurt and pain, if it was done in a negative way, and see if you can begin to heal and say that underneath it there was an incredibly loving intention, this ideal of fatherhood for you personally. And if you can't quite get there yet, if you're not ready to forgive, that's fine. But if we are going to become a beautiful heaven on earth, we need to start healing our relationship with the masculine. And I would say we need to do that more in the spiritual but not religious communities than any other place. Because the fact that men are not showing up in huge numbers tells us something about ourselves and how we are seeing the world, that it might be a little out of balance. And I say that for myself as well. How do I tend to be? You know, when my brother George was here, the thing that I noticed most is, wow, his energy is so different than mine. And where have I not embraced that masculine energy as a minister, that very powerful and volitional energy that has intention and purpose, and he just oozes that. We all get to look at that in our life. And with that, recognizing in your own life, am I allowing myself, am I blocking myself from being directional and volitional? Am I being courageous, or when things get difficult, do I just withdraw and say never mind? And am I being courageous in my family? Am I being courageous at my work? Directional and courageous, and am I willing to be different than anyone else? Am I willing to just be independent and autonomous? And even if other people don't agree with me, I'm willing to continue to go forward in what I believe and see. Loving the masculine. And so in loving the masculine, I would love to invite the men in our room to please stand. The great thing about being so few in number is you are seen. You are noticed. And we have, as I've mentioned before, one thing that's nice about being in a smaller community is people send me emails when they don't come. When you're at a big church, no one does that. So we have men who couldn't be here. They're celebrating their Father's Day in other ways, so we include them. But women, I ask us to put out our hands in blessing. And men, like our youth, can you put out your hands to receive? Oh, that's a good idea, so we can see everybody. Yeah, we can see you all. And so women, I ask you to repeat after me as we look at these men. Beloved ones, we see you. We see your beautiful hearts. We see your courage and your strength. We see your willingness to show up even when it's hard. We give thanks for all that you have sacrificed for those you love. We give thanks for your independence and autonomy. We give thanks that you ask us to be greater than we thought we could be. You are extraordinary lights of God. And you bless us beyond words. We love you. We bless you. And we thank God for you. And so it is. Amen. Amen. Yeah. Let's go. Go home and thank the men in your life, too. And thank you, Ben, for being here today.